of the Greek origin of our Christian tradition is that there are still vestiges of dualism in our tradition that are not present in our ancient Hebrew roots. The Old Testament, the people Israel that gave rise to that, didn't really bifurcate body from spirit the way New Testament texts and our Western modern traditions can. Now, this has some real implications, actually. For example, for years we have known that there is a link between depression and insomnia, but for professionals just wanted to treat the depression. And lo and behold, when they found out that if you treat the body, insomnia, come to find out that the depression almost always gets less. So treating the body and the soul as one thing is often so helpful to us. Now, there's no doubt there's a real physicality to our living. We are not bodies temporarily inhabited by souls. We are, in fact, bodies integrated with soul. And I might even argue that we don't each get like some little unique soulness that we get to own as if it's another possession. It's more like we participate in this grander soul that exists, that is part of what our bodies participate in. I love that in the Hebrew language, breath and spirit are the same word, ruach, and that when God created us using breath, body and soul together. So in the spirit of this series of sermons that I've been offering on how to be happy, here's one piece of that trajectory. How to be happy? Well, take care of your body, soul, of yourself. Be glad of this flesh, that it was worthy of Christ to dwell in our midst. You are a temple. Treat yourself as holy. Now, there is a more obvious difference between building and congregation than between body and soul. Our congregational forebearers were really rather indifferent to buildings, as they were attempting to live in covenant with God and with one another. They believed that was the work of community, of congregation. And so when they started building buildings in this New England world many, many years ago, they first built what they called meeting houses, which could be used for all kinds of purposes besides worship. They were simply buildings. The holy came about when the congregation gathered together. As the song has it, the church is not a building. We, South Congregational Church, are not this building. Not all churches can boast this, but we have two anniversaries: the anniversary of the building and the anniversary of the congregation, which I think does give us a lovely insight into the difference between these two. Still, there are good reasons to celebrate this church structure. It has been formed and shaped as a space by those who worshiped here, for better and for worse, and it has formed and shaped us for better and for worse. Our location here linked us in early years inextricably to the shipbuilding business. But now our location links us to tourism. And goodness knows we have all seen many tourists pause at the top of Temple Street or over there along the bridge to take a picture of this beautiful building. We are in one of the central hot spots in this community, not some by road, and that probably has informed our desire to stay centrally connected to this community. We want to be visible not just as a building, but as a group of people who represent God's beating heart, God's compassionate presence, God's helping hands here in this community. By the time this 200-year-old building was built, the idea of meeting houses was on its way out. I guess we can credit that to human nature. We love to consecrate certain things as holy. And frankly, this parallels the story of God and ancient Israel. God resisting the idea of a permanent structure or temple being built, God preferring rather to dwell in a tabernacle, which is to say a temporary structure, which is to say a tent. And it wasn't until human leaders decided that they wanted an amazing temple in their particular nation state to rival the amazing temples in other nation states so that they could have some boasting rights. I mean, it's hard to argue, or was hard to argue, that you have an amazing God, more amazing than that rival nation state, when your God is content to live in a shabby tent. But we might want to pause to think about that, because in fact God reiterated that preference in showing up in Jesus, not needing a building for that ministry, but instead wandering around the highways and byways, through the forests and fields, ministering by the side of the sea and even taking a boat across it. God moving about with us. So things change over time. And here we are in this building again, not a meeting house, but indeed a church. But now, as we move into this time, contemporary time, we discover that it is harder and harder for people to enter into places of worship. Many folk find our churches and these spaces too quirky and uninviting, and maybe even downright intimidating. I always wonder about the commitment it takes for somebody not only to walk in our front door, but then to climb up these stairs to be present with us. Alternatively, for some, we are simply a tourist location, something they come to observe but have no idea how to participate with us. Our deacons will tell you the number of times on Sunday mornings we have just such visitors who come and stand at the back or sit in the back pews for just a short while and then depart again. Just Just yesterday, a wedding was here in this space, and one of the older attendees of that wedding caught me out front after the service and commented on how few church weddings he goes to anymore. The world is changing. It's one of the reasons we have undertaken such projects as Remade in Hope, to invite people to be part of our community, our congregation, in less frightening ways. And it's also the blessing, I have to say, of having our community house space. I hope we will all enjoy for brunch together. It's much more of a blank slate for all kinds of activities, less intimidating to enter. But this building is still a place of nurture for many of us. It is still a place that many of us feel the spirit of prayer, the presence of God, the quiet soul, the recommitment of heart, the call to generosity, the claim of service, the conviction that all people are God's people. We often claim that, know that, feel that when we are here in this space. So it is important for us to strive to be worthy of this building. It may no longer be the case that we can easily attract numbers of people to sit in our pews. But what we can do is develop a reputation of being the people who are present in the community in love, in wonder, in acceptance, in extravagant welcome, in courageous presence, in partnership, in joy. We can be seen as essential, as a resource for the spiritual well-being of this community. We can be seen as partners for those who know the Christian faith, for those who have brushed against the Christian faith, for those who reject the Christian faith, and for those who do not claim it as their own. People pass through our church. They pass by it, and we want them to think not just that it is a beautiful building, which it is, but we want them to think about the people who come from this building to serve the community, who come to be present with them, who come to be partners in the broader community. And in that way, we have a very proud heritage and legacy. 200 years of people coming to sit in these pews, to be nurtured, reconnected to God and one another, to hear the voice of God, to hear the claim that Jesus has on their hearts, to know again they are called to serve in this community. God bless this congregation. God bless this building. God bless us to another 200 years.